In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how you can arrange and rearrange your panels. So remember, the panels are these literally panels on the right. They're where it says color, swatches, channels, layers, paths, etc. And all of them are different sets of ways to adjust or organize different components or tools within Photoshop. And in order to be able to get the ones that you want, you can go up to Window and you can see a list of all of them right here. And the ones that are showing currently have check marks next to them. Okay, well, let's say that we want to add some other things. Well, let's open, for instance, channels. Well, I want to show you something. Channels technically was already on the screen, but it wasn't currently visible as the front tab. If I go and look under Window now, you see that Channels is visible, but Layers is not, although Layers is technically sitting right here in this tab. So that's something to pay attention to. If you don't see what you're looking for because perhaps you're just overwhelmed by the amount of stuff on your screen, you can always easily go up to Window, find exactly what it is that you're looking for, and you can open it. So in this case, let's say that I want to show Layers again. Well, that's really easy. And of course you might be asking, okay, well, why couldn't I just click this? Well, you could, but if you don't see it right away, you can't find it right away, it's really easy to go up to Window and find it by the name that you know it goes by. Okay, the other thing too is, like, if you don't want to show a current set of tools, you can double click the tab name and you see that it went and it collapsed it down below. So, but it didn't just collapse the actual panel for layers, it also collapsed anything that was considered to be set into a group with it. So it collapsed layers, channels, paths. If you need it to show up again, you could just open it by clicking on the Layers tab or the Channels tab or so on. Okay, now let's say that you don't like layers to be set up with channels and paths. Well, technically these really do make sense together, so it's probably not a bad idea to leave them just the way that it is. But if you wanted to pull out layers separately, one thing you could do is you could drag it out separately, literally, and make it so that it's not docked anymore, so that it's in fact floating. And sometimes it's nice to do that if it's something that you're using a lot and you don't want it over in the side where it's cluttered. That's fine. And let's say that you want it to go back now. You can take by clicking on the tab name and dragging it, and you can kind of just like drop it, and you can see until you dock it there and it'll drop back. And if you want it to be first in the list, you can literally drag the tab over. So that's one of the ways that you can rearrange some of your panels. If you don't like the panel that's currently showing, let's say that you don't care about paths right now, you can click on this little drop down menu for the panel drop down and you can say close. And that just closed paths. If you wanted an entire group to disappear, you could click here and you could say close tab group. So now if I want it to show back up again, I would go to Window and then I would find Layer or Layers, and it opens the last group that Layers was associated with, and that was Layers and Channels. Okay? So again, if you want to collapse it, you can collapse it as such, and it pulls it down. You can collapse swatches and see it pulled everything back up. So typically layers, we'll get to that later, what layers will do, but typically layers are one of those things that's kind of good to have open because a lot of times you'll have a lot of layers. Okay, now you might be wondering, what are these little icons? Well, see these little double well, you can see there in the tooltip it says expand panels, but these little double arrows, if you click on that, or double click on them, then it will open up the panel so that it's a little bit wider. It really depends on how much real estate you want for your image that you're working on over here on the left. And you can see that if I double click properties, it will collapse and it pulls paragraph up. Alright, if you click on the double arrow again, it goes back down to the icons. Until you get familiar with the icons, you might want to open these up and remind yourself of what the icons are. So the other thing that you can do is you can go ahead and drag, let's say that you want all of them to be icons, you could literally drag your layers and dock it inside of here and it'll show layers now as an icon. You could also take channels, you could dock it there. It really just depends on how you want to work and what your level of comfort is with the interface. And that's going to be up to you. If you want to start trying to train yourself to get used to what these icons are, you could go ahead and force yourself to use the icons so that when you click on it, it'll open up that tool as a pop-out, and when you click on the double arrow, it will collapse it back into the icon panel. Okay? So there are a lot of different ways that you can organize this. And if you wanted to do that, you can see that everything then gets collapsed. And if you wanted to go ahead and get rid of this that's showing up over here, you could always undock it, and you could then either use the X to close it, or you could also go ahead and choose the dialog box to close the tab group. Now you'll notice that this is undocked currently, and if I try to drag this adjustments over here, I can go ahead and do that, and then I can have just one single thin section over here, and now I've got all of them together. Now sometimes that's not really beneficial. A lot of times it's really good to have different sets of different types of panels in two different panel groups, so that you don't have all of them stacked right here, because sometimes you want to be able to see more than one at once. But another really simple tool to use is a shortcut command, so that you can hide your panels just really quickly. And the reason you might want to do that, for instance, I'm going to blow something up, is if I had this blown up really large and I wanted a lot of real estate, okay, I could go ahead and tell this application panel over here to just disappear by going Shift-Tab. That key combination will really quickly make your panels disappear, and then you can make them reappear by pressing Shift-Tab again. And that's a really nice way to get them out of the way temporarily until you need them again. And as I said before, I'm going to really encourage you to use some of those keyboard commands so that you get really good at being efficient with this production work. Now, the other thing that I'll show you lastly about this is, let's say that you liked having this setup of your panels and of the way that your workspace is arranged, with the option panel docked up here in the toolbar on the left and so forth. What you can also do is, up under Essentials, you could go here and say New Workspace, and then it's going to allow you to save this workspace, and so I could call this my custom workspace or something like that. Okay, and you save it, and now you see that it's saved like that. Now I want you to notice something else though. If you go back to Essentials, you'll see that it looks just the same. It's because it saved your Essentials as the current workspace that you had modified. So if you want to go back to the way the original Essentials was, you can go down to Reset Essentials, and then it goes back and it gives you the default settings for Photoshop. But if you ever wanted to go back to My Custom Workspace, you could click there, and you would have your different panel arrangements and so forth as you had set them before. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that workspace though, because it's not that special. And you'll notice that I can't delete it while it's currently active, because I currently have that one set up. So I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel. I'll go back to Essentials, and now I can delete that custom workspace, My Custom Workspace, and I can say yes, and now it's gone from the list. So as you take the class this semester, you're going to see which panels you really like to use more than others, and which ones you really depend upon and having them open. And so you can go ahead and create your own workspace as necessary. And that's going to be the end of this tutorial.